Hi, everybody. Today we're going to talk about Wade Wilson. I don't know if you remember Wade Wilson. He was sentenced yesterday. He's the guy that had all the tattoos all over his face, the creepy smile like the Joker's. Oh, yeah, here's a picture. Yeah, I'm going to tell you all about it right after this. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I know I haven't had a show in a couple of days. This whole thing with the Robert Tellis case is crazy. This man, the jury is still deliberating. 2 days. 2 days. What in the world? You know, it goes back to what I said about this whole thing. These people from Vegas are very familiar with corruption amongst the politicians and the cops. I spoke to my friend who lives in Vegas, and she's like, "Yep, it's a thing." So they are. Somebody believes this man. Somebody, he stood on the stand. Stood. He could have stood, and nobody would have known it because he's only 5'5". Anyway, he kind of, even though he was meandering in his testimony, he humanized himself with the jury, So anyway, that's all I've got to say about that. I will go live when there is a verdict. I never anticipated that it might be a hung jury. I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? All right, let's talk about Wade Wilson. 30-year-old Wade, I don't know, he was 30 years old at the time he committed this crime back on October 7th of 2019 in Florida. Florida, it's a hell of a drug. Florida. That's a Taylor Swift song. Anyway, in case you didn't know that. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Back in Cape Coral. It started out in Fort Myers, ended up in Cape Coral. This is on the west coast of Florida. So on October 7th of 2019, this guy goes out to this bar, this called Buddha, and he meets this woman, Christine Melton, 35-year-old Christine Melton. And, long story short, they hit it off. They end up with a group of people that go home or go to somebody's house, not home, but they go to somebody's house. He's having sex with Christine. The party ends there. He decides he's going to take the party to to Christine's house, and he ends up killing her, strangling her. So he leaves after he's murdered her, and he goes to find his girlfriend. What was her name? I have it here. Hold on. Her name was Martinez. She owns this salon. And he goes to her, and he just beats the crap out of her in the parking lot while people are watching. I mean, they're calling 911 and everything, but they don't want to get involved. This guy is huge. He's like 6 foot something, way different than, we got Robert Tellis here, and then we got Wade Wilson here. Anyway, he beats the crap out of her, takes her car, and leaves. And then he goes driving. He drives up to Cape Coral, and he finds this woman, Diana Ruiz, 43-year-old Diana Ruiz, who's walking to work. And he's in his car, and he stops, and he asks her for directions. And I don't know how he did it. He's very endearing. He gets her to get into the vehicle to show him, I guess. And she ends up dead, strangled. He dumps her body and then drives over her multiple times. Like, these killings were so gruesome. If you sat through the medical examiner testimony, it was horrendous what these women went through, these victims and their poor families. Oh my God. So yesterday was a sentencing hearing. So they started out with, there's a hearing that you have to have in Florida to establish whether there's any mitigating factors, health-wise, brain-wise. And the defense put on a neurologist to say that he suffers from major depression. These are apart from the neurological exam, which led him to some other conclusions, he also has psychological problems that he's diagnosed with, which is depression, bipolar disease, and schizoaffective disorder. And so then he looks at an MRI of the brain of Wade Wilson, and based on his looking at this MRI, he says there's a small ventricle in his brain, which and there's some frontal lobe damage and brain atrophy, which could lead to emotional instability, and he is more likely to be impulsive and act out without being aware of the consequences. Okay, if you say so. I mean, he's a neurologist. How the heck does he know? Anyway, so the prosecution puts on a forensic pathologist. And he's like, no, the MRI does not show that. He's looking at different levels. He's comparing one level to a different level. No, he's wrong. There's no brain damage. This guy does not have brain damage. And that he has a normal adult brain. There's no evidence of chronic traumatic injury to him, because he was trying to claim that he'd been in a couple car accidents where he was a passenger, two separate accidents where the driver hit a tree and he passes out, and neither one, he doesn't go to get medical care. Well, one, he went to the ER and he signed himself out against medical advice. And the other one, he just doesn't go. He flees because he's on probation. He doesn't want to get caught with whatever they were doing. And so there's no medical evidence to establish that he ever had a traumatic brain injury. And then he was like, oh, I played football as a child. And this medical examiner actually pointed out, this forensic pathologist, he actually pointed out that that disease that they associate with concussive syndrome, there's a name for it, a fancy name for it now. It's in like less than 1%, like a fraction of people that play football in this country. It's that rare. I mean, we hear about it a lot, but it's rare. So no, so they end the hearing, and the judge says, we're going to come back at 2:00 and you can make further argument if you want at that time. And if he asks the defendant, you want to say anything? He's like, nope, not today. When I come back later, I'm going to say something. What do you mean later? So the defense actually reads a letter from Wade Wilson's family. One of the mitigating factors that they put in front of the judge was, oh, woe is me. His original family abandoned him, and he grew up with these loving adoptive parents. Here's a letter from the adoptive parents.
Does your client wish to address anything in this hearing?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Wilson nodded his head no. Judge, this is a letter from the adoptive parents of Mr. Wilson. It's been 5 years since the worst of this began. You can't possibly understand how sorry we are for the families affected by this tragedy. We cannot change the past, but we wish we could. On that fateful day 5 years ago, not only were the lives and the dreams of two women lost, with their families left behind in shock and grief, but another family was left shocked and grieved over a different kind of loss. It's easy to recognize the victims and their families and to feel profound sympathy for all they suffered and lost. But one group that isn't often recognized as those also suffering is the family of the accused. Our journey of loss didn't happen all in one day as theirs did, but it was heartbreaking nonetheless. Wade was a joyful child, loved his parents and sisters, and was loved immensely in return. But over the teen years, and then especially in the early years of adulthood, Wade began to slip away from us, becoming withdrawn, erratic, and depressed at first. Then as addiction was added to mental illness, he became frankly paranoid and delusional, and the sense of loss became increasingly sharp. He was in the system for years trying to get help for his mental anguish and for his addiction. They put a tiny Band-Aid on it and then sent him back into the world without a diagnosis, medication, and without follow-up care. We tried to hold the pieces together, but had no idea how to find the support Wade needed to be the person he was inside. The system failed him, and that fateful day in 2019, we lost the last piece of the son we loved and all the hopes for his future. In those tragic moments, when the cancer of severe mental illness and addiction won, we lost our son, grandson, brother, nephew, and uncle. So we understand the despair, anguish, loss, and hatred for someone or something that takes away someone you love. Because despite everything, Wade is still our son, and we love him. The hopes and dreams of his life are already lost, but the human is still in there somewhere, tortured beyond what most of us can even begin to imagine. Taking his life will not bring back those two beautiful women. There is no justice on earth for that kind of loss. Taking another life only adds to the tragedy. Please see it in your heart not to kill our son and make our innocent family suffer even more. The system designed to help those who suffer and are lost failed him. That system is broken and would be only further broken if it took Wade's last breath. That broken system owes Christine, and it owes Diane, and it owes their families, and it owes our family. It owes us all the peace that it did not provide to Wade. Candy and Steve Wilson.
Are they victims too? I guess. I mean, I'm sure that this has affected them greatly, but nothing in comparison to what those families went through of those women. Nothing. So ultimately, the judge says is that each side made an argument. What the judge was trying to decide, because this went in front of the jury. The jury found him guilty of two counts of first-degree murder and some other stuff, assault with respect to his girlfriend and stealing her car and that kind of thing, theft. But the jury, as to Christine Melton, came back 9-3 in favor of the death penalty. And as to Diane Ruiz, they came back 10-2 in favor of the death penalty. So now it's up to the judge to decide, are there enough mitigating factors for him to, that outweigh him imposing the death penalty? And here is his conclusion.
All right, let the record reflect that State's President, Defense Counsel, and the defendant are all present. We're here for sentencing. Was there anything else that the court needed to address prior to sentencing?
No.
All right. So I have considered all of the testimony and evidence, arguments of counsel, applicable case law, and statutes. I have prepared a written sentencing order, which I will file contemporaneously with the pronouncement of the sentence here today. I also have copies for the state and defense, which I'll hand out once I conclude. So in the state of Florida versus Wade Stephen Wilson, case number 19 CF 568, the court will read aloud the portion of the sentencing order related to the sentencing circumstances and proportionality. In evaluating the aggravating and mitigating factors, the court does not engage in a mere counting procedure, but instead makes a reasoned judgment based on the totality of the circumstances. In reaching this decision, the court is mindful that because death is a unique punishment in its finality, its application is reserved only for those cases where the most aggravating and least mitigating circumstances exist. The law never requires the imposition of a death sentence. In this case, the totality of the circumstances indicates the defendant, with premeditation, beat and strangled Christine Melton in her home before stealing her vehicle and driving to meet his girlfriend, Melissa Montanez. After Montanez refused to get into the car with him, the defendant battered her in broad daylight. The defendant told law enforcement, when Ms. Montanez managed to flee from the defendant, he fled the scene and drove back to Cape Coral, where he decided that he would murder another person. He saw Diane Ruiz walking to work and pulled over, pretending to ask for directions. She got into the car to provide directions, but the defendant strangled her when she tried to exit. He then drove to an empty lot, strangling her into unconsciousness at least one additional time on the way there. When she tried to flee from the car, he drove over her at least one time, inflicting mortal injuries to her spine, ribs, and neck. The evidence showed that both murders were heinous, atrocious, and cruel, and that the second murder was cold, calculated, and premeditated. The defendant inflicted serious physical and emotional pain to the victims. Moreover, the defendant committed the murders while on probation for prior felony convictions, and he committed 2 first-degree murders contemporaneously with each other and with grand theft of motor vehicle, battery, and burglary of a dwelling. There were no statutory mitigating circumstances that were established, but the court considered the non-statutory mitigating circumstances presented by the defendant. Out of 13 enumerated non-statutory mitigating factors, the court found that 10 had been established. Out of those established, 6 were given little weight. The totality of the mitigating circumstances indicates that the defendant suffers from drug use from a young age, along with undiagnosed and untreated mental health issues of some kind. He felt abandoned by his biological parents, but had a devoted adoptive family who raised him in a supportive and loving environment. Defendant did not resist law enforcement when arrested and confessed fully to both murders. The court has further considered giving great weight to the advisory verdict of the jury, who recommended that the death penalty be imposed by a vote of 9-3 on count 1 for the murder of Christine Melton and a vote of 10-2 on count 4 for the murder of Diane Ruiz. The court recognizes that there is no mathematical formula for considering the aggravating and mitigating factors. It is not enough to weigh the number of aggravators against the number of mitigators. The court carefully considered the nature and quality of each aggravator and mitigator. Having reviewed all of the aggravating factors proven beyond a reasonable doubt and all of the mitigating circumstances reasonably established by the evidence, the court finds that the aggravating factors greatly outweigh mitigating circumstances. Given the facts of the case, nothing in defendant's background or mental state would suggest that a death sentence is inappropriate. This court's review of other reported capital cases has led the court to conclude that the death penalty is not disproportionate in this case. Under the totality of the circumstances and evidence, the court finds no basis to override the jury's verdict. The totality of the circumstances warrants that the defendant, Wade Stephen Wilson, be sentenced to death for each count of first-degree murder. Accordingly, it is ordered and adjudged that the defendant, Wade Stephen Wilson, be sentenced as follows. Count 1, first-degree murder of Christine Melton. The defendant is hereby sentenced to death. Count 2, grand theft of a motor vehicle. The defendant is sentenced to 5 years imprisonment in the Florida Department of Corrections. Count 3, battery. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 364 days in the Lee County Jail. Count 4, first-degree murder of Diane Ruiz. The defendant is hereby sentenced to death. Count 5, the burglary of a dwelling. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 15 years imprisonment in the Florida Department of Corrections. Count 6, petty theft. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 364 days in Lee County Jail. The defendant is given credit for all time served on this case on all counts. All counts are to run concurrent with each other, meaning at the same time. All statutorily mandated fines, fees, and costs as announced on the record are imposed, and the defendant is committed to the custody of the Department of Corrections for execution of this sentence as provided by law.
Nope, it ain't going to work. So he reviewed 10 out of the 13 mitigating factors he considered, 6 not so much. Some of the mitigating factors was, that he was abandoned by his natural parents, that he has mental health disease, drug use at an early age, did not fight arrest, and then he confessed. But in the end, it didn't outweigh what he did. What he did was so, I cover a lot of cases. This was one of the worst that I've ever covered. It was so bad what he did. Not that it's ever good, but there was no basis to override the jury's decision in the end, and he has been sentenced to 2 concurrent life sentences. A bunch of other years, as you heard, but everything's running concurrent. So he will not be leaving prison anytime soon. Which, where could he live in society looking like that? Good God. Oh. I don't even know if my son's gotten a lot of tattoos in his day, and I cringe every time because that's my baby. He's getting a tattoo. You're ruining the beautiful body I gave birth to. But your face, oh my God. Anyway, that's the show for today, guys. Have a great day. Like I said, I'll be live tonight. I'll go live when there's a verdict in the Robert Teller case, and I'll be live tonight at 7 p.m. Central Time for Craft With Me Wednesday. Not sure what, some kind of crochet, I think. Yeah, crochet. So I'll see you guys, or maybe I'll get the Legos out. Want to see the Legos? Okay, whatever. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.